Oh, yeah.
You guys will have to click permission. I'm just looking for a little post here.
Yep.
Ah, there it is. All right, so we got, that's the wrong post. Now I'll figure it out later. So today's topic, fear and anxiety. And when I talk about fear and anxiety, I'm going to be using a different context than might normally be, that you might normally find with something like this. So the only thing a lot of people understand about fear and anxiety is they don't like it. They don't want more of it. It's bad. Well, good or bad, that's true. And when I talk about fear and anxiety, I'm going to continue to use the same methodologies that I've used for the other concepts that we've talked about, meaning that fear and anxiety do not exist as on and off states. And that's a very important distinction to make. When something exists as an on or off state, it is or it ain't. When something exists on a spectrum, you can measure trace amounts. When it comes to measuring trace amounts of things, just to give you an example, we can do that to parts per billion in blood tests reliably. So that's how fine, you can get those kinds of readings. So the difference between 0 and 1 billionth is huge. It's as big as you can get before you don't have a thing anymore. So
is it infinite or vast?
It's the difference between existence and non-existence. That's so if it is or it ain't, a billionth of a percent is, and 0 is ain't. Everything that is not 0 is. So to establish scale like that, now you can have different types of fear, resonance, right? Everything that has to do with frequency also has to deal with resonance, and that includes fear. Fear is a stable state that your body can produce. It's a stable state that your body can produce when nothing is wrong. And if you have anxiety, it's a state that your body can't leave alone. And everything in between, right? Some folks have high anxiety. Some people have low anxiety. Some people have moderate anxiety. Everybody who is human has some anxiety. Even if it's almost 0. And I can say that because anxiety comes in many different forms, and you have 3 different consciousnesses which are capable of experiencing it. So even if one of them is broken, like the part that knows how to explain what's going on, that doesn't mean the other ones lose the ability to connect with that part of the body. Now that's bad if the part of you that is broken is the part of you that regulates that state of mind. It doesn't know how to get out, or rather, it doesn't know how to not keep jumping back in. That's far more accurate. Troubled states of mind are caused by avoidance. Something maybe you don't know, something you could have no reason to know, no ability. More often than not, though, a troubled state of mind is something you could know, but you'd rather not. And you can tell that you have a troubled state of mind like that if other people need to do things before you're okay. That's the biggest evidence that there is some sort of anxiety or fear of something. So when I'm talking about fear and anxiety, I'm going to be reducing those down to a single concept. And the reason I am doing that, and that is different than what I do for most of this class. Most of the time, I do not reduce things down to that level. So there's a very specific reason why that needs to happen in this case. And that is because it's a calibration to make everything else work on a consistent scale. It is picking a moment to say this moment is the moment we compare all other moments to. And chronologically speaking, fear is at the beginning of that list when it comes to things that are alive and experience the unknown. So to look at it from that perspective, I'm going to say that fear presents as avoidance. And what separates someone who says they are avoiding something and something they are not is the layers of heroic things they place on top of how they avoid a thing. How many reasons is going away from it the right thing to do? How many reasons is avoiding a concept just or smart or wise? Go ahead, Tony.
So one of the things that allows me to receive all of your information, and we kind of got into it a little bit today with axioms, is the notion that this works for me, or this works for some people, or this works for all people or most people. And where we put these measurements or concepts or theories or, just all the information, how we choose to categorize it. Dang it, you just said,
I can tell you how I
just
think
talked
it
about
applies and
avoiding.
why.
You just talked about avoiding things.
Yeah.
I wanted to raise my hand to say that I definitely can feel, understand, vibe all the information, but a point where I think, okay, so I would say you lost me, but that's not in disagreement. That's just in needing to put this part in kind of a yes and maybe. And that's the and know most of this about themselves that would be beneficial to everybody. Like I said, all the information tracks well, but when making the assumption of why someone does something, I think that
I can explain that, and it's a biologically grounded explanation. So what we're talking about is extremes. And we're talking about extremes in a way where you can map them. So you could say that a person who experiences fear also experiences the opposite of fear. And somewhere on a line from absolute fear to absolute the opposite of fear, any person will exist. Just because that's what you're setting up a scale to describe that, so it's allowed. That is the description you're making of the list of everybody who experiences this, in which intensity you can put somebody there. So if I were to say who this applies to and why, it only applies to creatures that are capable of understanding the unknown. And when I say understanding the unknown, I mean creatures capable of knowing they don't know something in a moment. Creatures capable of impulse without understanding.
Analyzing these extremes, then when we talk about people avoiding things, we're talking about extreme avoidance.
I'm talking about I'm not. So let me walk you through this and why it's what it is. The avoidance is not optional. It exists on a spectrum, and everybody does it. Unless you're dead, you're incapable. If you ever shift your butt cheek because it itches, that's an avoidance. It's a very low level. If you ever cough an extra time because you feel like your throat might still be logged up, that's an avoidance of that sticky feeling, trying to clear it out. If your coffee's too hot, you put the cup down, that's an avoidance. If you got your heart broken, maybe you won't go back to that building ever again. That's an avoidance. If your mom hits you, maybe you flinch when people put their hand up next to you and it's involuntary. That's an avoidance. My point
All
is,
those things aren't voluntary?
what I'm saying is you experience that first because the neural pathway is 2 and 3 neurons, and it's how your body tells you something doesn't match what you know. It's your warning system. Snake or stick. So
Okay, I can follow that.
So my point is not that people either have an avoidance or they don't. That's the biggest thing that gets in the way of this idea. It's accepting the avoidance that you currently experience but do not recognize because it's so subtle. That is the key to everything I've been teaching. Because everything I've been teaching is the mathematics of avoidance. If you really want to put a name to it, the biggest thing that limits consciousness is avoidance. I can't have that idea. I can't face that truth. I can't understand that concept. Too bad. Not everybody gets everything. Be happy instead. If you're capable of being happy without having everything, I'd recommend it. The happier you can be with the less you have, the better. But when I talk about fear and anxiety then, the first hurdle to making use of fear and anxiety is recognizing how it is on and it never turns off first. Then you can figure out how to turn it off. And I've had a couple of lectures that kind of talk about how to do this. They all deal with the subconscious. Anytime the subconscious communicates with you, you have a reaction. If you have a reaction to something before you understand what that reaction means, something is going on, your patterns don't match. And that ranges from interesting to terrifying. And your level of ability to handle how different the thing you're looking at is from everything you've ever come to understand is going to be your tolerance for that. Some people can handle things that are very different. Some people can handle things that are a little different. And some people need things to be exactly the same way every time. The more you need things to be the same way every time is reliant on your neuroticism and your creativity. And I'll tell you why. If you're a stubborn baby who needs to have things right his way all the time, then you need to be creative enough to get it right without anyone else's help. Fair enough. So being ultra competent also is usually an avoidance of cooperation, which is usually an avoidance of trust and intimacy and sharing and vulnerability. Why? Because why else would you work so damn hard when it is so much easier to do many of those things with one extra person? Unless the very concept of involving another person at the beginning of a project is so foreign, disgusting, distasteful, inefficient, and not appealing that it doesn't even sound fun. It takes a thing that you love and turns it into work. No, it's not being destroyed because it's ruining the thing you love. It's being destroyed because it's mixing into a thing you love, the thing that you're also avoiding by pursuing the thing you love. That's one of the ways this can present. Now, how do you know if it's happening? How do you tell if somebody's not making a choice to do it that way? Well, it's easy. You ask them not to do what they're doing. And you measure. And this is why the fear, anxiety measurement is so key, because it's a compass. And all it does is says towards or away. And that's the most useful measurement you can make if you know how to use it. You need 2 points, which I've taught you how to get in previous lectures, and most of you know how to get on your own before you had this class. So if you have 2 points, all you need is a direction towards or away. And that is why fear is useful, because people will reliably pick away when they are afraid, or anxious, or uncomfortable, or approaching the unknown. That is why that measurement is so key. Because you know, everybody here knows, there's 1,000 ways to ask a specific question, 100 different ways to word it. Obviously more. But when that is true, and you know how to ask a person the same question different ways, in ways that they are capable of understanding, so you know you are talking their language, you eliminate miscommunication by shared definition ahead of time. That is when your bias has been removed from the measurement of going towards or going away from. Because then I can pick any 1 point and see how many times I can creatively approach that point that are different and look for a pattern. And if I ask a question the wrong way, you don't get the right response. You might chalk that up to a communication error. Fair enough. This is why you try again. I usually like to try 3 or 4 times. And I see your hand up. I'll finish this in a second. 3 or 4, or 5 different permutations of that same question. Well, then it becomes obvious. It's not a lack of understanding at that point that is causing the communication to fail. It is a specific aversion to not approach the point that you are at, because attempts to approach that point from multiple directions have failed, which means at that point, this person has decided the only direction this point can allow is away from. Duncan, go ahead.
I had to take it off of mute. I wanted to maybe get an idea where you can put something in there to correlate the possibility of what you're talking about as the fear part of that fight and flight.
Yes.
Also include something about the startle response, which is very similar, but
I think the startle response is a discussed sensitivity to vulnerability. So you get startled, and then you immediately you have that reaction, and then you have a reaction to that reaction, which is disgusted, and then you have a reaction to the reaction of being disgusted, which is not good. That's how I would explain that. It's a layered concept, which means whatever is causing that needs to be unpeeled in layers, because there's multiple kinds of hurt going on. The stories that hurt the most are the ones we have the most excuses to avoid telling. Those are the stories where we turn our superpowers into heroic comic books. Because if everyone's looking at the thing we can do great, nobody's talking about the thing we can't do, which is the opposite of the thing we do great, because we do the thing we do great because it's comfortable, because not doing the thing we do great sucks. Avoidance. Underneath all of that avoidance, there's a decision that's been made that something is to be avoided at all costs. It's something that can't be touched. And you'll never know what that thing specifically is unless you can tie together all the things it has in common with other things that you do that to. For example, say that baseball games, the color blue, and rocks bother you. The hell do those have in common? Well, I'm trying to think, what the hell do those have in common? I thought I could just string together any 3 random objects. Baseball game, the color blue, and a rock. Okay, no, here I got it. Maybe your dad hit you with a rock when you were playing catch because he was an asshole. And he was wearing a blue shirt. But you block that out because it was awful. And now for the rest of your life, whenever you see a blue shirt, or the color blue, you just, and you know what? It's not a paralyzing fear. That's the thing that sucks about this. Remember, it's a spectrum, 0 to terrified. That's the kind of shit that hovers right around 1% or less. That's the kind of shit where you have an equal choice of picking something and it doesn't matter. And that will be the difference that pushes you one way or the other. It's the weight of a feather, which is why you can't feel it. But when your scales are perfectly balanced, it's enough to tip the scale. Which means being objective is done in stages of removal. And if you don't map all of the stages, you won't know where your calibration is wrong, because I'm telling you, the type of information that people share, and you've seen some of it, when they won't talk about a thing, is vast if you know about the thing they won't talk about. So you have to learn it first. If you're gonna do it this way. If you don't know it better than they do, then you're both out of luck. This only works when one person has information the other person wants. Or it's generally a lot easier when someone else points it out to you. I can tell you that. I have a much easier time seeing the patterns that people get trapped in than I do seeing my own. And that's because that's how information works. I'm going to see the things I understand. I'm going to see the things I've mapped out. I spend a lot more time observing other people and how they map things out. And I do that obsessively because it's my passion. I really am just fascinated by how it works. So 24/7, I've got my brain churning on that thing, but in other people. Now, I can say that when you do that enough, you do get things that trickle in. Because the minute you say that person does this and this and this and this, wait, I do this and that and that and that. I never saw that before. Here's the key. The things you're paying attention to that other people are doing wrong are things you're doing wrong as well. And that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong in the moment or that you have bad intentions. It means there's a bad understanding of it. Because if there wasn't a bad understanding of it, your subconscious wouldn't be pulling you towards it by saying your patterns don't match. Which is why understanding why people do what they do is always going to be interesting to me. Because there's a lot of ways to answer that question, and I haven't found them all yet. I think a sad day for me would be if there was one perfect question, or perfect set of 3 questions, more likely, that could just completely sum it all up. If you filled in the gaps all the way down the line, you know, the unified human theory. And I think there's a lot to do with how probabilities approach one around great potential, how wave functions collapse to a specific value. I think that has a lot to do with ego. As the ego approaches a sufficient value, the probability that that ego will get what it wants, if it is properly balanced and doesn't destroy itself, approaches 1. Just like a black hole. But that's slightly off topic and a little bit too sciencey for what I'm talking about here. So the point is, the things that you get in fights over, that you tell other people to do, you are not doing them. Why do I say that? Now, because if you were, other people wouldn't have to do them. You wouldn't get mad. It wouldn't matter. Your existence doesn't depend on theirs because they can't do a thing that you cannot. Or they can't do a thing for you that you can't do for yourself. So that's the number one thing. If people are too emotional around you, you might not be emotional enough. If people are too smart around you, well, you might not be patient enough. If people are too confusing, you might not be open enough. If people are too crazy or dangerous, you might not be creative enough. You might not be adventurous enough. If people are too narcissistic all the time, your ego might be 1 inch tall and all you can see is giant things by comparison. So the point about fear and anxiety, which this is a heavy topic, Because if you are trying to attempt to measure things, you are the instrument. You are the consciousness. You are the mind. You are the tool. Tools need calibration. It's proven time and time again that humans have bias and fallacy built in for survival, really. It's too much to absorb all at once. We don't know how to do that yet. We would need special schools that started very young and gave us very core ideas at a very young age when our minds were still open enough to not be screwed up from all the times we did it wrong. We wouldn't close off all the avenues of positive growth because we had a bad experience going down them one time. Like what it's like to be scared shitless and actually have it help you. Instead of running from the feeling because it was done poorly the first time it came around. Fear focuses. Fear tells you what's important. Fear is tied to love because if you love something, you will be afraid if it's taken from you in a way that's wrong. You should be, anyways. Why wouldn't you be? If you love something, it should hurt to have it taken from you, especially if it's taken from you in a way that destroys it when it didn't deserve it. Innocent destruction happens. And it causes damage. And most of that damage is initiated by others, but perpetually self-inflicted. Why? Because the body doesn't like it. So what happens? Well, the body runs from it. Why? Because the body doesn't like it. So what happens? The body never learns to understand it. And every time that situation comes around again, it summons all of the past memories of dread and all of the past memories of how those dreadful feelings went away when they just removed themselves from the situation or beat the other person enough or called them names or insulted their intelligence or did anything they could to take the spotlight away from where it was trying to point. All of those things have one thing in common. They point away. So having a conversation where you are trying to make a point with somebody and have the same conversation is a lot like counting cards in Vegas. Blackjack. Face cards are +1. No, face cards are -1. Face cards are +1. Number cards are -1. And when the count gets up to like, I don't know, I think I have it reversed, but anyways, the count hits a certain number, the deck is hot, that's when it's time to bet. So when you have a conversation like that, if you have 2 points that are trying to get close to each other, 2 people are trying to see the same point, you need to be moving in the same direction, closer to each other. If you're moving in opposite directions, you will never meet, which is why the compass is important. So what do? You're having a conversation and you ask a question. Well, here's what I do. I use my measurement thing on a conversation. Communication is measurement. 100% of communication is measurement. Something is always being referenced. Something is always being compared. Some information is always being conveyed in reference to something that is either known explicitly or assumed to be understood implicitly. So it's things like, okay, see you later. Those are references to things, and it's understood what those references are. But self-contained statements are all measurements. I think this is a bad thing. Bad for who? Bad compared to what? That changes it. So how you test that is you look at every conversation that way and say, what is being measured right now? And it's fairly obvious from the sentence, really. Most sentences are point and click. This thing is blank. This thing means blank. If there is no balancing factor, if there's no boundary condition, if they're making a statement that is 1/2 of infinity and ignoring the other half that could be explored, that's an improper measurement. It's time for a request for clarification. That's the communication technique part of it. So in a conversation where people are legitimately not understanding each other, that request is very easy. Oh, I didn't know what you meant. Can you explain that? Could you tell me what that word means? Could you walk me through that part of it? And guess what? When it's okay to explain that, you'll get zero resistance. Your compass will point towards, yes, you're doing it in a way that they like. You're doing it in a way that doesn't make them feel bad or uncomfortable. They're going to move forward. But now all of a sudden, you're having a conversation and the definitions are shared and everybody likes everything. I don't want to talk about that. But it's one answer, one yes or no, one either or. Yeah, but it doesn't make sense. Doesn't matter. And that's when you start counting. There's going to be 1,000 reasons. And the reasons matter to the point where you can understand what's behind the reason, because somebody will tell you what's behind their reason eventually. That kind of goes back to those hidden motivations, which is why fear and anxiety are valuable. If you keep poking something with fear for long enough, it will give up something good to save itself. Try this one out for size. Moment of orgasm is surrender to fear or love. But in either case, it is surrender. And it jolts the brain with everything it has because it legitimately has no concept of what's right and wrong. In that moment. So that's the brain's way of avoiding that level of clarity. It will zap you with everything it has if you try to learn too much, including what it means to completely give over to fear and anxiety or fear and love. Luckily, you get to recharge and try again. Hopefully with a partner who is happy to help you do that. Failing that, I don't know, go somewhere where it's not expensive and legal. The point is, all of those reasons, you have to be able to take a direction that doesn't care what they are. And that is why fear is a good one. It's first, whether it's almost a zero value or a significant value, it is first in line. So chronologically speaking, it is t equals 0. And when t equals 0, you can apply that to any situation, because you can always imagine a situation where you start the clock right now. And that concept can transfer. You can do that with any human that you plug into an experiment. Okay, from this moment, t equals 0, I ask this question that moves towards this specific point. You can repeat that infinitely. Does this person move towards this point, or do they move away from it? Okay, that was the first time, but that doesn't prove anything. That's not the scientific method. 3, minimum separate observations. More if you've known them for a while. No, they won't talk about it. No, they really won't talk about it. Now they're starting to get upset, but I haven't talked about it the same way. That's avoidance. That's fear. And when fear is present for too long, the body doesn't like it and tries to get rid of it. And that's when the stories begin. This person is making me angry. No, this person is presenting information that has existed before you were born. You're hearing it for the first time from their mouth. Whatever that feeling is, it's you. It's not them. They put it in the world. We keep it alive. How long we keep it alive is how well we can cope with that information. If you avoid it, well, your subconscious files that away into the I don't understand what this means category. And the subconscious mind is literally their one job to figure out exactly what that means. Because it's your pattern detection system. It's responsible for keeping you alive, and you make its job harder when you avoid things. But we all do it. Because sometimes good enough is good enough. But to your body and your subconscious, maybe good enough is not getting eaten. Maybe good enough has nothing to do with whether or not your conscious part of you is happy at all. Maybe your subconscious doesn't give a shit as long as you're still alive. It's not you. You're the emergent property. It's singular. It could be fine. It might be fine torturing you because that's better than what you're doing, which is nothing. So when we talk about fear, talk about avoidance, talk about attention. Attention deficit hyperactivity. I've got that and I know all about it. Anytime you stop paying attention, you're avoiding something. Period. If it happens every 10 seconds, you're stuck in a loop. That's good news. That's not bad news. It's not bad news that it's your damn fault. You can do something about it. Fuck everybody who says you can't do anything about it. That's avoidance. How do I know? Because I'm too stupid to avoid it. And I figured out how to get it done. And it's the same thing other people have said is right. Go where you don't want to. Because that's where the stuff you don't know lives. Because you haven't been there. That's the power of fear and anxiety. Anxiety can focus. It can tell you now is the time to pay attention. I should be scared that I will miss something. I want to focus. Why don't I want to focus? What happens every time I look away? Notice when you're looking away. Notice it every time and start to keep track of what you were doing 1 second before. What were you looking at? What was happening? Was it a certain idea? Was it a certain movement, certain topic, certain color, certain smell? Once you have that answer, your brain has the rest of the information to figure out what fucked up reason put that block there in the first place. Hopefully it's one that you can undo, or at least learn about so that you can be aware of it and practice. Your brain can learn anything you teach it enough times, but you got to know what to teach it. That's the free will. Some people got it, some people don't. That's out of the box. Sure, we're better at different stuff, but everybody's got the same parts. I got a brain, I got organs, I got an amygdala, I got hormones. I don't even have all the hormones most people got, and I figured it out. Other people have figured it out. They wrote books about it. Monks have figured it out for decades, more than decades, hundreds of years. So the point is, it's in us because we're not special. And that's a good thing. Fuck everybody who says I'm too special to be helped. Why do I say that? Because they're already fucking themselves and I can't do any worse. I'm just pointing at it. Some people think that make you evil. How can he know so much unless he's evil as well? Possible. So look at my actions. What do I use it for? Tricking people, stealing money. I've been doing things to make my life easier at the expense of someone else. Or am I going out of my way to make people mad at me? But ultimately, after having them treat me like a punching bag, do they thank me? That's what they needed. They needed somebody to hit that knew how to hit them deep enough that they couldn't tell them to go away. And there's an art to that, because there's a very big difference between hitting someone where it hurts and hitting someone where it helps. It's the difference between surgery and assault, and it has an equal level of precision. Anybody can beat somebody up and make them feel like slime. You have to know exactly what to cut, exactly what to measure, exactly where to not back down if you're going to help, because it's going to hurt. But that's That's fear. That's anxiety. What is pain? We don't really know, except that we don't like it. Body is telling us something's wrong. Doesn't feel good. What else? Not a whole lot. We know how to try and make it go away. Take pills, exercise, surgery. Look at how much of human existence has centered around the avoidance of pain and hardship. Farming, medical, drugs, both recreational, sports, television, entertainment, sex, food. People are pain avoidance machines. Because it keeps you alive. But it's not optimal or efficient or useful or productive or undamaging to avoid mental fear, to avoid emotional fear. That's destructive to the self. You have to kill yourself to avoid it because you are making it. The only way to get rid of it is to consciously and continually make yourself less than you are. Why? Because being more hurts. I think kids cry all the time. There's a limit to what you can tolerate. The limit's not fixed. People who have gone through severe trauma and recovered have higher limits than people who have not gone through severe trauma and have not recovered. You know what I mean? So there's options that people have when it comes to anxiety and fear. I'm going to go over them. There's only a couple, really. One, you get put through a situation that is so awful. No person should ever have to go through that, and you somehow survive. You come out of that an okay person, and you eventually work through all the crap that was caused by whatever you went through, because what happened to you was not okay. It was not proper, and damage was done. And it's your fault when it's not cleaned up, because you're the only one who can do it. The person who made the mess can't do it. All the king's horses and all the king's men can't do it. Laws can't do it. Words can't do it. Other people being nice to you can't do it. Sex can't do it. Food can't do it. Drugs won't do it. Drugs will make you think it's working until your body builds up such a tolerance to your own delusion that it rejects both the drug and you. You're far worse off than you were when you started. Avoidance runs out. And here's how you know it's run out. Somebody pushes your button and you become a child. I think you're dumb. If that makes you lose your cool, you got some real avoidance going on when it comes to what you think intelligence is and what you think it means if other people think you have it. I had a big phase with that. I needed to be the smartest guy in the room. If anyone said I was dumb, I became a kid. I showed them how smart I was. I thought that's what I was doing. I was throwing a tantrum. I was just throwing a well-orchestrated tantrum. I thought it was great. I was a big hero, put that guy in his place. Those things are embarrassing to read. How many times do you go back and read all the angry comments you wrote? How many times do you comfort yourself? How many different ways you told those idiots off? How many times do you revisit those posts many times you reread them? I'm guessing that number's low. And why would you? Nobody likes to relive their shame. They share the happy stuff, good stuff, the positive stuff, the big successes. Or if they need attention, now they'll share the bad stuff too. But that's a different topic. Attention grabbing is avoidance. It's not an avoidance thing. It's a, how should I put this? It's a lack of production of inner validation. Avoid that kind of attention seeking is a symptom of a weak ego, low amplitude, needs to be bolstered by resonance. So it puts out a thing that it wants, which is acceptance. And it's built up through amplitude addition, like we've talked about before, slightly different thing. But in the fear and avoidance and anxiety, when you get right down to it, there's information that we seek. There's information that we do not know exists. And there's information we are made aware of that we actively ignore. When it comes to staying alive physically, follow your reactions in the moment. They're going to be the best assessment you have of what's physically going on. That's why they're there. When you have avoidance emotionally, that program needs to change unless you want to die the person you are today. Because boundaries do not change unless you cross them. And if your boundary is, I can't do this until someone else does that, and nobody is willing to give you what you can't give yourself, you will not get it, and you will die, and you will never have had it. And according to some people, if this is all some sort of eternally reproducing thing, if we live the same life over and over again, who's to say we don't? We couldn't tell the difference if the universe just expanded and collapsed the same way like a giant perfect clock. It might equal an opposite. It could. Just with the time going forwards and backwards, but the people inside wouldn't know the difference. It would be perfectly natural. If that's eternity, then you will be trapped in whatever hell you let accumulate around yourself for the rest of time. And after your first time through, now that was your first time through, that set the thing in motion. But either way, if you're just looking at this life, if there are things you can't do, they either stay with you or they go away. And the person to make them go away is the person who has the most to gain. So I'm just going to kind of close when I talk about fear and anxiety. I'm going to wrap this one up early because it's really a focused topic, because it's really only supposed to establish you can understand fear and anxiety by reducing them to towards and away, because the size of the neural circuit that translates that information is literally communicating information in terms of towards and away. Anything that changes that information changes the message, because that is all the message is giving you, is towards and away. And anytime the answer is away, in any way, shape, or form, that's the clue. What you do with the clue is up to you. But I can say, the more I seek these things out, no matter how subtle they are, there's always something underneath. And every time I find it and learn how to recognize it, the existing power being used to create that constant sensation is able to be released from that eternal task that we are blind to. And that's when the difference is felt. And that's where most people get it backwards. People remember how good it feels to get things. People don't remember how much it sucked before they had them, or how much they had to pay in the moment, whatever personal cost there was to get them. People who don't like pain won't like personal cost, even though everybody likes the reward. Let me ask a question a different way. Say that you were just the peak of physical ability, and you had everything going for you. And then the next day you woke up and you had the strength of an 80-year-old man. That would hurt, right? Especially if you had no explanation, no reason, or at least no way to understand what happened. You went from being perfectly fit and stable to having the physique and capacity, maybe not the appearance, of an 80-year-old man. That's going to hurt. Nietzsche would say that's a change in potential you will recognize. It's a change in amplitude, specifically. Your power is down. So it isn't that losing is painful. That's what people who don't understand fear think is true. Oh, I can't lose. I can't hurt. I can't have that thing happen that's going to hurt. Changing in any way produces a similar effect. And how quickly you move that needle determines whether that effect is felt positively or negatively. So when you are facing fear properly, which is my point, is there is a proper way to do this. When you are facing fear properly, the only answers that matter are towards and progress that is not zero. You follow those two rules, and you can work through any fear. And that stops the second you turn around and the second you stop moving. But the progress can accrue. So what you're supposed to do is find out what your tolerance for pain is. And if it's low, your speed, which is towards and not zero, is very slow. And maybe your distance is far away. But because your speed is not zero, and because it's within a limit that you decide is proper and you can tolerate it and you move forward, if you do that long enough, you will reach the point of your fear. And then what? Stop? No. You pass through it. Find out what's on the other side. Go where you've never gone before. Which is why anytime, and then I'll close the lecture with this, anytime you don't want to do a thing, anytime a thing bothers you, anytime you want to get away, anytime you want to condemn, by the way, is a layer on top of fear. Anger and frustration are for people who are disgusted by their own fear. They're disgusted by their own avoidance to the point where they forcefully want it to go away. That's a heroic presentation of being afraid. So when the answer is no, if you don't understand why, to a very specific degree, that would allow you to continue under different circumstances, then you would be happy with that, because you would understand perfectly well ahead of time why that makes sense. Then this advice does not apply to you because you've already done it. Until you go to the other side, you cannot know what is there. You can only guess. Fair enough. Not everyone's brave. See, I got to discuss sensitivity with vulnerability, which made me learn how to get good at being brave. So I was running from my own cowardice by learning how to emulate avoiding it. Ended up internalizing that later, and later on went back and got the parts of fear that I had left behind by learning how to be brave that way. That was only half of it. Once I realized how to be brave, and once I realized why I was being brave, that's when it all came together. I was like the cowardly lion before. Yeah, I was strong as a lion. I was as weak as a cat. Because every time shit got real, I couldn't handle it. Because somebody thought I wasn't great. Somebody said a bad thing that knocked me off balance. Somebody made me want to be a kid because they called me a name and made my feelings hurt. And worse, I didn't want to admit that my feelings were hurt because that would be disgusting. I would have lost control of myself. So now I've got control issues layered on top of anger, frustration, which is also fear and avoidance at my own impotence. Great. Good luck unraveling that without being disgusted that you have to live that way, without being afraid that's how you're going to die, without being afraid that the people who are trying to help you will reach a limit and stop, because that's what I would do, because it's rational. Be afraid that you look at yourself so you never become a lost cause, because it's possible and you need to understand how. And the times that it is most likely is when you think you could never do it at all, because nobody makes a mistake when they're looking for it. Everybody makes the mistake when they think it can't happen. So that's more or less what I've got to say about the utility of fear and anxiety and how they play a part in our perspective process, and how knowing that they are at the front of the line and that the way that the neural circuitry behaves is really an either or gate, one of the only ones in the body that you could point to, which is what makes it so useful. Knowing the difference between towards and away and linking that to fear gives you the ability to drill down the onion of avoidance that will get to the core issue, so long as the direction is towards the fear and not away, so long as the speed is not one that overrides your tolerance for pain and exposure to the unknown, and so long as the desire to understand what you didn't is there. That is all that's required. But the price is humility. And if you do not have it, or if you cannot act like you have it, that's the minimum. You have to know what it looks like. You have to know how you're not doing it, and you know how to act like you have it. Even if it doesn't feel sincere, if you can emulate it perfectly, that's good enough for a good measurement. But good luck trying to do anything less than that and still claim to have an objective view about something that is beyond a place you won't go. That's all I've got. Any questions?
Well,
Not the lightest topic, I know. It's really the one that's designed to punch you in the dick. Really break you down to zero, you know?
Tom, I don't have any questions, but I would like to say that what you said there made a lot of sense, and I totally agree. And I was happy that no part of me felt like I wanted to fight you.
So I didn't step out of bounds with what you understand about consciousness, neurochemistry, biology, etc. I didn't make any gross overstatements or simplifications from your perspective.
No, and what I would say, you know, I wouldn't say I know any of those things. I just know me.
Well, that's all I'm asking is if you felt like, you know, someone else could say, Tom, you misunderstand the number of neurons in the brain. It's really 6, it's not 2. You know, that might be true. I'm not going to say that couldn't be true. I'm a creature of pattern, not a creature of, you know, like when I'm going from A to B, if A to B always gets there, sometimes what's in the middle, you don't have time to map out. You should know what's going on, know when it's out of bounds. If you can't rebuild it from zero, sometimes that's okay, situationally dependent. Duncan, did you have something, or were you just kind of reacting?
yeah, I think you could have probably covered a little more on the concept of the fear and what was the other word?
Anxiety?
Anxiety. Yeah, because I mean, personally, from my experience, I see both, but I see both actually pretty far apart. Anxiety is something that is not always based on fear or fight or flight aspect.
Yeah.
Fear does actually play all in part of the fight or flight.
Anxiety
Anxiety,
is a lot more tied to control if you wanted to
yeah,
drill
it's
into
lack
it.
of control, right? Or, the ability to gain a certain control. That's
So, yeah, exactly. It is simultaneously a desire for control and a lack of control and a conscious disgust sensitivity at the lack of control. If you really want to get down to it, which produces a sickening state. You're literally sick with yourself, is what
and in that,
anxiety is.
yes, and in that respect, I could see where you could tie the fear aspect into it because it does give you that same kind of resilience.
So what happens is fear initiates and anxiety builds over time.
Right.
Fear is the stimulus, anxiety is the counter. So
Okay, I see what you mean there. Yeah.
So yeah, one is the environment, the other is the propagator over time. And once it reaches a critical level, which if you want to get really technical, is greater than the level of perceived benefit. So there's a perceived benefit arc and a personal discomfort arc. And as long as the benefit is greater than the discomfort, there will be an excitement response or a curiosity response. And when the perceived cost is higher than, or the anxiety goes above a certain level, then the CBA fails to pan out. Your body gives you the let's get the hell out of here situation. The problem is people with attention issues, underneath that is just so many disgust cycles running on top of each other because you understand so much and you understand so little at the same time that you're literally disgusted with your own ignorance when really, yes, you are ignorant of all those things and so is everyone else, but you are more aware of your ignorance to the point that it makes you feel dumb. And if you combine that with any sort of experience that made you feel powerless as a kid, that amplifies that helplessness and just makes you feel useless and bound to the agreement, validation and attaboys of other people because that's how you've learned to gain value instead.
Yeah, and with me, when I was growing up, I was always into sports and very active. So not too many people could actually beat me up physically.
Yeah.
But
How are you with words?
they would hurt my feelings and pick on me and call me stupid and tell me I can't do anything. And mostly my family, believe it or not.
Yeah, I believe it.
At school you have those others, and I've even had teachers turn on me like that. And I said, no, because I can't, and that was mostly because of my dyslexia.
Yeah.
And because I couldn't read until my second year of college. And that made a big world of difference. If finally I got a teacher that was teaching me in English,
Yeah.
a teacher that's finally said, looked at me and says, I noticed you're not doing well here. And then was asking me some, I thought was really kind of weird questions.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize at the time that these questions are basic questions that are asked to people about how to determine if they are dyslexic or anything like that. And she
Yeah.
says, you're dyslexic. What? Excuse what? She goes,
So
"You're-"
I thought of something here that just in the moment that I think might help both of us because it helps me immediately. It's a thing I've been piecing together but couldn't say until you made the pattern easier for me to see.
Yes, I see that.
People like us who see the world the way we do and make the connections the way we do, we understand our potential because we can see the difference in complexity once the ideas are fully developed over time. However, because we can see that complexity goes so much deeper than everyone else, we are blind to the fact that we behave like idiots at the start because it takes us longer to figure it out because we're doing more. So even though we know we are smart, we are surprised, disgusted, and offended when people treat us like idiots, even though we're acting like an idiot would, asking questions an idiot would ask. We have not given the other person enough information to understand that we're not idiots. And if we get upset when they act like we're acting like an idiot, instead of a humble response that admits that, yes, we are slow learners when it comes to starting, then all we do is prove them right while trying to prove them wrong. So
I
the
understand
reaction produces the decision that we're desperately trying to avoid, because we're not trying to say this is true. We're trying to say this is true or this isn't true, when we should be saying this is true right now, but it won't be in the future.
That's an idea.
Because you're taking away from a person what they legitimately see from their perspective. And they're right to call you dumb when you're acting like someone who's dumb. At
Well,
least if they don't know you.
you also got to realize too, that sometimes it's fun to sit there and play back on their own stupidity. Yeah, if
Why?
somebody comes off with an idiotic question to you, then you just reflect the same idiocy back.
Yes. So there's some
I
fun in
say,
that.
okay,
for
oh,
you.
really? How does that work? Then that if you do this, then they have no answer.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
you're
would
not
say-
being smart.
I mean,
Okay.
it depends on the goal. It depends on the goal.
Back to you, my friend.
I would say if the goal is to expand, then it could be as simple as a data collection. If the goal is to somehow punish someone for being rude, then you're just making a hero and villain thing that's hiding over. You're punishing people who've made you feel weak. Or maybe they're not even that person. You're punishing people in the past who made you feel weak because you could get one over on this guy.
I never looked at it that way.
Well, why
I
would you?
always looked at it as you, because a lot of people will do that.
Let me ask you a question.
that's
Why
one
would
thing
you
that
ever
I
look
have-
at it that way?
That's one of my natural aspects, is that I also tend to reflect like
Yeah.
a mirror. I'll reflect your attitude. I'll reflect your sensibilities right back at you. Try to help
Yeah.
you to understand, to see what you look like.
Yeah,
But most people can't see that. They're not that they don't, they can't
but I want to
without training.
I want to jump back to a question here because it was an interesting one.
Yes.
So why would, I think I was asking you, why would you react that way?
That's a question to me.
Yeah, because you said, you made a statement and then you said you would do that, but then you kind of kept going. And I
Oh,
didn't want to lose the moment.
Yeah, well, the one reason why, if somebody, I'm trying, I've done many.
No, I'm sorry, I phrased my question badly. I can make it simpler. That's my fault. My
Okay.
fault.
I'll give you that.
When it comes to looking back at a situation and remembering it from a shameful aspect, unless you were doing that on purpose, Duncan, can you think of a reason why a person would do that? Or would they normally want to avoid looking at all the things that they've
I
done
see
to
the
make them
point that
bad?
they'd rather avoid, but to me, I would do that. I did that on purpose.
Yeah, so if you're not, the point
There's
is,
a big
again,
difference.
if you're not doing it on purpose, so that's goes back to the very first thing, and whoa, what a perfect way to bookend the segment. It's not either or.
Okay.
You don't do it or not do it. You do it sometimes and you don't do it other times, and it's a spectrum. So anyone who looks at a thing and says, this job is done, that job is done within the limits of your perceptive ability, because you're a creature of sense and sensation, and you've hit the limit of your creativity and pattern solving and pattern recognition to map what you can't understand. That's what I would say. So it's a scale. So keep in mind that while it is good to recognize this is a time for self-reflection because I'm avoiding this, realize that any time in any place, you could avoid a thing and realize, even though it was so minor, I did that and I didn't do it on purpose. What's going on?
Yeah, and that,
Moments you can change life if you know what to do with it, or you can ignore them like everyone does.
yeah, well, yeah, but then there's no lesson learned if it's ignored.
Yes, exactly. Then you have the same problem every
needs
time
to be
and
learned.
don't talk about it at family gatherings or on Facebook. And it just perpetuates until you die, which you should be afraid of. The end. Tony?
Myself, I have no understanding of fear, so I don't know. Even when I was 9 years old, first time I remember really getting into a fight,
Yeah.
I turned and ran because me, my brother, and my sister got jumped by about 14 to 15 arrows, and they
Oh,
were
yeah.
out to kill us. And
Yeah.
I ran home telling my dad we needed help. I needed help at that. We're being jumped, and Donnie and Sherry's out there fighting. Oh man, he beat me. He grabbed me, lifted me up off the floor, slammed me. Boy, you get your butt out there, and you better be fighting for your brother and sister, or you're gonna have a fight with me.
Hmm.
And he let me go, and I hit the floor running. I went out there, and I remember the first thing I did was catch that same guy that threw the rock at me, and I broke his leg. And next thing I knew, that my brother and sister both told me, said, I just went like a banshee. I just went totally bonkers on everybody, and they eventually all ran. But I did put 3 of them in the hospital. And I was only 9 years old, and these were older teenagers.
Yeah.
You know, in that sense, I was afraid of ever facing my dad.
Yeah, right? Like
I
you had a
seen
bigger
he could-
fear, bigger avoidance. You avoided one thing and you avoided another and
Yeah, if
less.
yeah, to avoid being in a fight with him, I better get out here and fight these other guys. But
All right.
that taught me there that, you know, I had to learn to stand up for myself.
Yeah. Tony, you got anything before we wrap it up? I see you're chilling out, playing some music.
Yeah, I wanted to play you happy birthday.
Okay,
Oh, yes, here we go.
I want to hear it.
Happy birthday.
I'll turn it up.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to
That was amazing. I've never had a live
Yes.
birthday piano before.
Oregon, but way harder. Feet.
Yes, you're right. You're right. I shouldn't do that. I always cheat with my keyboards to get the organ sound. I totally underscore the difficulty of playing that instrument.
Oh, I think I've been putting 10 years into it and I'm still not 100%.
Yeah.
I think all would just to tell you that.
All right, guys, it's past
Where
bedtime.
you go?
Thanks for hanging out.
Tom, happy
Patricia,
birthday.
you got the last word?
Yeah, I said happy birthday. I like
Thank
birthday.
you. That's a wonderful last word. Thank you. All right, goodbye, everyone. Thanks for joining me. We'll do the next
We
one.
love you.
I love you. If I'm not mistaken, it's Beneath the Shadow. So this is more of how to talk to your shadow and find out what's actually hiding beneath it. This is what happens after you make friends with it and integrate. So we're gonna talk
I have
about
something quick.
male and female energies.
I have
a
something
little bit.
quick.
Go ahead.
I have something quick. All right, so Patricia, she was asking about astral projection. And today during my yoga meditation, my son bumped my leg and opening my eyes for just 1 second to make sure he was actually leaving the room sent me into a quick dizzy spell trying to rip myself back to reality from astral projection. And I took that as a sign to let you know, Patricia, that if you wanted to do that Monday or talk about it Monday or go over anything about it, that I'm good to give you everything I know about it, because I obviously painfully tried to come back to reality today and I couldn't. And I immediately thought about you and how I can probably help you with that.
I love that. Thank you.
I'm going to weigh in on that because that actually ties into my own meditative research. I can give you the alternative perspective.
I would love to be there too.
Yeah.
So
Then we'll make it Monday's topic, just so everybody knows that'll be Monday's topic.
Sure.
Wonderful.
some of my meditations have been CBD, not CBD, THC assisted, like it's a scheduled thing. It relaxes. I'm a creature of high anxiety, which means when my anxiety lowers, I'm able to ask questions I could not before. So
Yeah.
by controlling the anxiety in that way, and by focusing my mind on targeting anxiety and looking for it, I am more relaxed, more able to find it, et cetera, seek and destroy. So sometimes if you get the dosing wrong, or the edible wasn't made properly, and you get a little bit too much, you get vertigo. Well, I'm telling you, from my perspective, because I am a high frequency going to a low frequency, which is what people are trying to do the opposite of. We're trying to meet. So people are trying to become more calm so they can hear the slow vibrations, and I'm trying to be more calm too. But because of the way we're approaching it, we pass through layers from different directions. If
You're looking at it.
you are able, so remember this the next time you experience vertigo. So it's a very specific thing. Consciously attempt to soothe the anxiety without trying to banish the vertigo. Because what is happening, and I know this because it took a long time for me to do this. What is happening is you are changing frequency rapidly. Your brain frequency is changing rapidly to a lower state. And that's what the vertigo is. So if you banish the vertigo by avoiding the anxiety, you banish the state transition and lose it. The price is comfort. If you can weather the anxiety without feeling like you're going to throw up. And what that means is you accept that you are spinning. You accept the fear response. You let it wash away because you're familiar with it. It subsides. The transition remains. That's what I've noticed. I don't know if that triggers anything for anybody. We'll find out next time. I didn't want to leave that one hanging because there's no way I would have remembered it. So thanks for coming. Talk to you later. See you next time.
See ya.
Bye.